Fresh fruit has to be one of my favorite things of summer. And what's not to enjoy? It's so fresh and juicy. And I have to ponder if maybe that's what Sage was thinking when they named their accounting solution PeachTree. You know, it's a tree, it grows, it flourishes, it gives you the fruits of your labor. My name's Erin Oleson, and I'm the owner of PC Keys Technology Solutions, a national computer training company. And in my 15 years, I've learned to count on my accounting software in order to tell who I owe money to, who owes me money, and how to plan for the future growth of my business. In this course, Total Trainings, Sage, PeachTree 2009 Pro, we're going to learn all of the things from start to finish, including how to create a company, how to add things to sell, how to move through the sales process, how to collect and deposit money, even how to work with reports and close the books. So if you're ready to enjoy the fruits of your labors using PeachTree accounting software, then come along for the ride. It's going to be a fun and delicious one. PeachTree is an accounting software solution that can assist you in tracking your finances. Well, okay, you probably already knew that, but more importantly, in doing so, PeachTree enables you to remember important financial deadlines, track monies owed by you and to you, as well as analyze your company in order to fully understand your financial health and best plan for the organization's future. So why do we use accounting software? Well, I've given you a few different reasons here, but basically, bookkeeping and accounting have been around for generations. Up until the mid-1990s, many businesses, especially small businesses and sole proprietorships, used paper-based methods for their accounting. Well, if it worked so well for so long, then why are we changing? Well, accounting software enables businesses to execute, manage, track, and report on their transactions in order to conform to standards and enhance their organization's potential. Now, everybody knows that accounting is useless unless it is accurate. So probably the number one reason to use this kind of software is for accuracy. Software assists us in accuracy in many ways, by providing methods for using data without re-entering it each time, as well as safety features prohibiting entering of items not recognized. For example, you can't sell something that you don't have in inventory. Along the same lines, bookkeeping becomes more streamlined when items can be recalled instead of re-entering time and time again. Furthermore, because the program does the math, the likelihood of simple mathematical errors is virtually eliminated. Believe it or not, math errors are the most common errors found in financial and tax reports. When it comes to end-of-period or end-of-year processes, the efficiency is sometimes unfathomable because the software can complete these processes literally in seconds or minutes instead of days or weeks. So software streamlines and accelerates the speed at which we can do business while also ensuring accurate data. You'll see that some of these other things kind of get all rolled up into that. For example, if more than one person needs to be working on the books, then we can have enhanced collaboration when more than one person can access the company files at any given time. It's hard to do that with a paper file, but it's not difficult to do with an electronic one. All of these things go into the overall efficiency of the company. For example, if you don't have to repeat data entry, that's probably going to reduce your costs because people are spending less time. Not to mention the fact that we now have security. Instead of having a paper file just sitting in somebody's desk, we actually can have 128-bit encryption that makes this file very safe to keep on a system, as well as copy, backup, and all of the other things related to it. So when you ask yourself, why do I want to move to an accounting software system? I think once you start to think about it, the answers are pretty obvious. What may not be quite as obvious is that PeachTree 2009 comes in several different versions. We have the Pro or Professional, Complete, Premium, and Quantum. Pro allows only one user at a time, while the other versions allow for multiple simultaneous users. Complete and Premium, in fact, allow up to 5, and Quantum allows up to a whopping 40, because Quantum is really designed for an enterprise where you have multiple locations, offices, and facilities. The important core functionality of accounts payable, bill payment, purchase orders, writing of checks, accounts receivable, quotes, invoices, and reporting, to name a few, are available across all of the products. In versions like Premium and Quantum, you do receive a little bit of extra. For example, you get more standard reports than you do in just the Pro version. The main difference found in the Premium and Quantum versions is the ability to do planning, budgeting, and working with things like serialized inventory. Again, for a complete option of what everything offers and which one is best for you, you probably want to go to the website to check out exactly what they offer. Within the Premium version of PeachTree 2009, we also have industry versions. These are primarily created for construction, distribution, manufacturing, and nonprofits. As you take a look at this list, you probably can figure out what the differences are. For example, if you work in a construction business, you probably work with subcontractors, you have a lot of labor, maybe some retainage, or maybe you have progressive billing, where somebody pays a deposit and then other parts as you go throughout the project with a final payment at the very end. These things, of course, are specific to construction, and they can be found in the specialized version. Likewise, if you're in distribution, then you're probably making kits or assemblies of things, and maybe you're purchasing and reselling in different quantities. For example, you buy something in a pallet, but you sell it as an individual item. So as you can see, this can have some additional functionality that aren't included in the regular versions because most people won't use them, for example, in an office-based system. But for your industry, they're important, and they're found in these industry versions. While we're getting oriented to some of the factors related to choosing and using PeachTree software, I want to take a moment to talk about what I call technicalities. No, I'm not sure that everybody will be interested in this, and I'm also not sure that this is exactly the right place to put it, but since we're talking about choosing software versions, it kind of seemed like a good place to go. I just wanted to talk for a few minutes about some of the things that you may want to know before you make the purchase of PeachTree or if you're having issues. First of all, PeachTree's database is called the Pervasive Database, and it works in the background to store and manage your data. The problem is that Pervasive can actually be mistaken for a virus. So if you have things like firewalls and those types of pieces of software in place, it might try to block it and you run into some issues. If it's mistaken for one of those threats, you should have your IT, or you if you know how to do so, make some firewall adjustments and go ahead and make sure that Pervasive can be accessed by PeachTree without bringing up these threats all of the time. It usually isn't too big of a deal. For example, on Vista, it will simply ask you, do you want to allow it, and you can say yes. So don't panic if you see that. Now you know what Pervasive actually is. Next is that PeachTree 2009 is compatible with Windows operating systems, including Windows Vista. And that's always a good thing. So I wanted to mention that PeachTree 2009 will not provide support for users on the Windows 7 platform. Now that does not mean that it's not going to be compatible. What it means is, at the moment, the makers of PeachTree are saying that they're not necessarily going to support those issues on Windows 7. By the time you view this course, they may have changed that. So of course, go to your technical support site or talk to your IT people if you're having some issues and you're on a Windows 7 platform. Once you or someone else in your company makes the choice about which version of PeachTree, and you also have it installed, then it's kind of time to take a test drive, if you will. Think about buying a car. You walk onto the lot, you say, yep, I think I like the features of that, but until you actually take it for a test drive, you're not quite sure how it's going to feel or how it's going to behave for you. So that's what we'll do now. Take a quick test drive of PeachTree. The first step, of course, is getting in and starting the ignition, or in this case, launching the software. There are many different ways that you can do this. I'm simply going to double-click the PeachTree icon that's on my desktop. At this point, we're greeted with the welcome screen, and you can see that we have the options to do a couple of different things. We can open an existing company, which is known as a company file, or we can create a new company, which we'll do in the next lesson, or down at the bottom, we can explore a sample company. Since this is like our test drive, and it may or may not be driving the actual car we end up buying, a sample company is going to be just fine. So I'm going to give this link a little click and wait for the sample company file to open. After the database is accessed and the interface opens up, you get to see a whole bunch of stuff, and we don't want that to be completely overwhelming, so let's kind of take it from the top. First of all, on the left-hand side, we see what's called the navigation pane. It has different tabs on it, customers and sales, vendors and purchases, and so forth. If you are using the complete version or higher, you may see an additional tab right at the top that says Business Status Center. That's not available in the Pro version. It's kind of a key to knowing the state of your business and a summary, if you will. It's not available in the Pro version, so we're not seeing it. For us, we have the navigation bar with 7 tabs, or sometimes people call them pages. These are actually called centers, and you can click a center to see anything you want to see and kind of a summary about that. So for example, if we are on customers and sales, which we currently are, we can look over to the right and we can see different types of things that we would do for customers. We would create customers, we would create jobs for customers, we might work with sales taxes, we can work with quotes, we can put those into sales orders, which turns into an invoice. Maybe we're going to be assessing finance charges, and eventually, hopefully, we're going to receive money and deposit that into our bank account. The beauty of this particular interface is it does show you kind of a workflow, the way that things might happen. Now, it's not that you have to use all of these steps in your particular business processes, but if you're unfamiliar with what to expect, it does kind of give you a very visual workflow type of view that you can see what's going to happen. You'll see these with each of the different centers that we have available. In addition, you can see on the right-hand side that we see a smaller version of what's known as our customer list. We also have some recently used customer reports near the bottom right, and a nice graph that shows us our aged receivables, money that we are still due. So as you can see from this point, we have access to working with virtually everything about our customers, as well as getting some snapshots of different statuses from within our company. If I move back over to the navigation bar on the right, we'll see that that's the same for vendors and purchases, inventory and services, employees and payroll, banking, and even the company as a whole. The company, of course, is very interesting because it not only has a flow chart for things like what you do with a customer, but it also has things like settings, working with the chart of accounts, how to maintain your data, doing backups, and even revenue, year-to-date, total revenue, cost of sales, really some good summary information that can get you a picture very quickly. Just below these different tabs, you see a section called Shortcuts. Shortcuts are customizable, and they are here, for example, for things that you use very often, sales invoice or receiving money for a customer. These are really completely customizable. If you want to create your own, you can click the Customize link, click the Add Shortcut button, choose a category that you're interested in. Let's say, for example, that we want to go to banking, and we want to work directly with an account register. That is now added to our shortcut list, and we can rearrange it. For example, I could move it up in the list to come right after my sales invoices. I can also rename it, and I can completely delete it. These particular shortcuts will show up regardless of which center you have selected, so they're kind of a static area on the left side of the screen to give you quick access from anywhere within the file. I'm going to go ahead and say OK to get out of this. And we can see that we now have a link for account register right in our shortcuts pane. All right, let's go back up to the top of the navigation bar, and let's do customers and sales just to kind of get back to a starting point. And let's talk a little bit more about the rest of the interface. At the very top of the screen, you see what's known as the selection bar, and it currently says customer and sales. And then below that, we have what's kind of a context-sensitive toolbar, meaning whichever center you're in, there might be different buttons. It also shows us some good information. For example, right now, our system date is set to March 15th, 2009, and the current accounting period that we have open is period 3, which is March 1st of 2009 through March 31st, 2009. It also says this is the default page, meaning that customers and sales is the center that opens when you launch PeachTree. We can change that. If you spend more time or you're more interested in looking at inventory and services, maybe we'll go over to the right-hand side, select that tab just to make sure it is the one that we want, right-click on it, and choose Make This the Default Page. Now you can see this is the default page on the right side of that bar, and anytime you open PeachTree, it will automatically open to this particular screen. That makes it very nice if you don't always want to work with customers and sales. It's kind of like when your inbox is the default folder that opens up with your email client. Some people would rather see a task list or a calendar, so everything is customizable to work the way that you want it to. Now that you're comfortable with the interface, I want to take a little bit of time to look at a list. All of these things, customers and sales and vendors and deposits, they really go back to something called a list. And there is a menu for this in the top left side of the screen. If I select from the list menu, I can see again the different categories, customers and sales, vendors and purchases, employees and payroll, and so forth. And I can go ahead and I can open up a variety of options from here. So under customers and sales, I can say, show me my customer list. The list opens up in its own window that can be maximized and minimized and moved around, but basically all lists are the same as far as how they're configured, even though they hold very different pieces of information. First of all, we can close, we can find new things, we can open, we can print out the entire list, we can even work with settings, and if we're working with multiple people who may be updating, in this case our customers, we can also refresh the list, kind of like refreshing your web page. On the left side of the list, we also see some very common tasks. In this case, we can view sales invoices for a customer, sales orders, quotes, payments, all of the jobs for a customer, and so forth. So once again, a lot of information that is easily accessible right from this window. But let's talk a little bit about the list itself. As I said, a list is really the basis for most things that happen in accounting software, and so we want to be very comfortable with them. Remember that this is all coming from a database. So currently we have a bunch of different customers, and maybe I need to find a particular one. Each list has a search category, and we can go ahead and use that to find things quickly instead of scrolling up and down in the list. If I click in Search For and enter the name of my customer, which is Trent, and then choose the appropriate field, which happens to be the customer ID, but from this drop-down you'll see that you can choose any one of the particular fields that are in this list. Then I can click on Search. And regardless of whether I have 10 customers or 5,000 customers, it now makes it easy to find the one that I'm looking for. With this selected, then I could print, open, and do all the different types of things that I need to do with the customer. If I want to clear the search, I simply click the Clear Search button. In addition to searching, you also have the option to sort your lists. If I wanted to sort by customer name instead of by customer ID, I can simply click on that field at the top of the list. So I'll click on customer name. You'll see that it gets a little arrow, and if you click again, you'll see that the arrow flips upside down. So when you sort, you either sort ascending or descending, and it's simply a matter of clicking an additional time to choose which way you want it to be sorted. To put it back to the default, which is usually going to be the ID field, which is the first field on the list, I can simply click back there. We'll actually do a lot more work with customers and how we add and enter and edit those a little bit later, but this is the basics of how you work with a list. When I'm finished with the list, I can simply use its Close button, and it will take me back to the center. Hopefully now you're a little bit more comfortable with what the PeachTree interface is going to look like. We have centers. From centers we can choose activities or we can see summaries, and we also can work with lists in a variety of ways within the PeachTree software. Now we're just kind of taking our test drive here with PeachTree, so we're not expected to know all the little details about how the engine and everything works in a car or how it works in the software. But one of the important things to know, whether you're driving a car or driving new software, is if you have a question, where do you go for help? Well, in the software, of course, there's a help system, and I wanted to show you a couple of different ways to approach this. I'm currently in the Inventory and Surfaces, and I'm going to click on Inventory Items. And you can see there's a little triangle down at the bottom. That means it's going to expand out and give me some options. So I'll click on that, and I'm going to click New Inventory Item. Now this actually brings up a new inventory item form, which is great, but the purpose of this isn't to actually fill out an inventory item. I wanted to talk about help. As we're looking through all of these fields, a lot of things will make sense, like a description, the item ID, and so forth. But if I look over onto the left-hand side, I will see that there's also another field. This field happens to be Last Unit Cost. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. If you didn't know what the last unit cost was, and therefore what you should be entering into the field, you can right-click the field. You then have the option to say, what's this? What you are seeing is because I'm currently working on a Windows Vista system, so I have to kind of clarify this for you. If you're working on a computer that is not running Windows Vista, for example Windows XP, then you're actually going to see a help screen that tells you exactly what that field is about. But this wasn't brought over into Vista, so even though PeachTree 2009 says that it's completely compatible with Windows Vista, it is for the most part, but this is one feature that they didn't bring over. So I just wanted to show you that this may be something that comes up. If you're using XP, you can right-click and get help with a field. If not, we're going to have to go about it a little bit different way. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and close this window down. And instead, I'm going to press F1 on my keyboard. F1 brings up your help system, and that's really a universal key. In most applications, when you press F1, it's like going to the help menu as well. We need to talk a little bit about what's here because there really is a wealth of information, a lot of different things that I can look at. First of all, we have 3 tabs located near the top. I'm going to click on Contents to start. And you may be familiar with this because this is the way most help systems have worked for several years. Contents is kind of like a book and chapter analogy. If you want to know about getting started, for example, you can expand the Getting Started book. And inside you can see different chapters, like Using PeachTree Help. You can therefore expand that. And eventually you'll get to a specific page that talks about what you're interested in. So this is really an overview, and if you're ever just looking around, kind of interested in what can I find out about a certain type of topic, contents might work. But you can also see that this is going to be a long way to try to find something specific. If you're looking for something specific, try clicking on the Index tab. Now the Index tab is good if you're looking for a certain keyword. What I'm looking for is something about last unit cost, so I'm going to type that in. You'll see that it kind of scrolls and tries to figure out what I'm talking about, and unfortunately last unit cost isn't something that's easy to find in the index. So instead I'm going to go one step further to search. This actually goes in and finds all of the text within help articles, not just the titles and keywords of articles. This time when I type in last unit cost, I'm also going to put it in quotes. That means it needs to find the entire phrase, not just one or two words. When I get it typed in, I'll press enter. And then we can see that it has come up with several different topics that have to do with last unit cost. In fact, one of them is actually the field we're looking for. I can give this a double click, and then I can see the last unit cost information on the right. So even though I couldn't just do a right click because I'm on Windows Vista, I can use the help system and the search feature to find what I'm looking for. It takes a couple extra clicks, but it's okay. What if we are looking for some other different types of information? Well, let's go back and use a couple of those other features instead. Let's go back to Index, and let's say this time that I'm looking for keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to type in keyboard. By the time I finish typing it out, I can see that it's narrowed it down to several topics, one of which is exactly what I'm looking for, keyboard shortcuts. Give that a double click. This brings up the specific topics it found, and let's say that we're using the PeachTree menus. There we go. Now we get to see the information that we want on the right-hand side. So it's kind of a drill down, looking for the exact information you want, but not too much work. Don't forget, at the top of the help window, you can hide the left side of the screen. So if you're trying to work with this, you can expand and collapse. This gives you more room to actually see your screen instead of just the help window. To get that back, just click Show. You also can go backwards and forwards like in a web browser to previous topics. Now I'm back to maintaining inventory items. You can refresh the window, which you shouldn't need to do. You can go back to the home screen, and here's a helpful one. You actually can print a hard copy of a help topic. If it's looking at different steps that you need to follow, that might be helpful. Or if you're trying to look up information for someone else, you can print a hard copy as well. On the far right-hand side, you'll also find a glossary. So if you ever have terminology that you don't understand, the glossary can be a great help. I'm going to close out this window and remind you that you can get to this by either going to F1, or you can also use the help menu. Now I still have my inventory items form open, so I'll go ahead and close that as well. And then just show you that the help system itself has PeachTree accounting help, which is what we are in, with the F1 shortcut. And there's also a lot of other information here. So it's a good place to go in and kind of look around just to see what else you can find out about PeachTree. With that, you should have a great overview or a good test drive of PeachTree. Kind of be warmed up, you know what it's going to feel like, you know what to expect. Now, when you actually work with the product, you can start getting into the nitty-gritty details.